Pitch on the way to Garvey. Hit high to right center field. Way back. Going. It is gone. The Padres win it.
It's time for the 10th inning.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable.
Put me in cold. I'm ready to play today. Put me in cold. I'm ready to play today. Look at me. I can be center field.
Welcome to the 10th inning. I'm Nick Mattos, and today we're going to preview the NFL playoffs wild card weekend. The NFL starts this Saturday. We've got 4 games on tap, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. And joining me to break down the games is my co-host on Overtime with Nick and Bob Seymour, and from San Diego, sport leader, the mighty 1090, and co-host of College Football Gameday, Saturday mornings 10 to 12:30, Danny Reiter. Well, gentlemen, the regular season ended last week, and we start the new season. This Saturday, the playoffs begin. The 3 W's are in place: who, where, and when. Danny, the first game, the Oakland Raiders travel to the Houston Texans to take on the AFC South Division champions in Texas, Saturday at 1:30 in the afternoon. Bob, I know you're a big Oakland Raiders fan, and I'm sure you're very disappointed that the Raiders lost on Sunday night to the Denver Broncos. Now they have to go and play a wild card game. What's going through your mind right now, Bob? You've been a fan of the Oakland Raiders for a very long time.
Well, we seem to have lost a little momentum since Carr went down, and then we lost McGloin last week in the game at Denver. We did seem to play with a sense of urgency at all in the Denver game. Just kind of went through the motions, and so I'm a little bit concerned about our mindset going into this game to Texas. We have played Texas twice this year already. We beat them in Mexico City. We're going to start our rookie quarterback, Connor Cook, who really played in his first NFL game last week. So a little bit of consternation, but I think a couple things that have to happen are we have to be able to effectively run the football, which we haven't done for the last 2 weeks, and we have to try to keep Connor Cook upright, and we're going to count on our defense to try and stop the Brock Osweiler and the Texas offense. So that's how I see it. I'm a little bit concerned about our play, but we're in the second season. We played Houston before. We've already beaten them, so a couple of those things way positive. So let's see how it goes.
Yep, Bob. The Raiders defeated Texans in Mexico on November 21st, 27-20. It was considered a home game for the Raiders, but obviously both teams had to travel to Mexico, and the Raiders had a tough time that day against the defensive line of Houston. Houston has a very strong defensive line. The Raiders ended up winning the game, but it wasn't a very impressive game for the Raiders' running game, especially, Dan, had a lot of troubles. The Texans come in allowing the fewest points in the NFL. What do you feel the keys are for the Texans to defeat the Raiders, Dan?
Well, first off, Nick, you said it was like a home game for the Raiders. Let's be fair. Most games are like a home game for the Raiders. They come to San Diego, it's like a home game for them. So, when it comes to Houston, I think what's key is what they can get out of Brock Osweiler in that offense. I mean, we know their defense can make plays. J.J. Watt's been out all year, but Whitney Merciless has been a stud. I think Jadeveon Clowney is taking steps forward. But they've just had a lot of quarterback issues. I mean, Osweiler, they announced today he's going to start, but he was really struggling. That's why he got benched for Tom Savage. And they were going to need him to play his best game. They were in the playoffs in this same situation last year at home against another AFC West wildcard team and got their clocks cleaned. And I think they don't want more of the same. The Raiders, we talked about this issue that they have now. It's scary how much things changed for them. They were looking so good. They were in a tight race with the Chiefs of the AFC West, and Derek Carr goes down, and it's just real tough for them. Their offense doesn't seem to have any rhythm. But I think they can still make plays on defense, especially with Khalil Mack, Bruce Irvin. I mean, they have a great front seven when it comes to forcing pressure and everything. It's just that their secondary can make plays. I think that it's going to come down to which QB makes the most plays. I'll tell you what, Connor Cook at Michigan State, in big games, he was always known for being pretty calm and stoic. I know they got smoked by Alabama in the playoff game, but overall he was known as being that calm demeanor. You wonder if he can still have that in this kind of game. While with Osweiler, he's been seen as the big bust of the season for how much money he's being paid. Is this the time where he really proves that he was worth the money?
Yeah, very good point about the money and whether he's a bust or not. And Connor Cook was 34 wins and 5 losses at Michigan State. So he's obviously had a very successful, college career. He started out there last week, 8 for 9.
He also played in 2. Go ahead.
He started out, he was 8 for 9 last week.
He also played in 2 Big Ten championship games. So.
Yep.
Yes, he did. And
Go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
Here's a couple of my concerns for the Raiders. The Houston Texans are 7-1 at home. They're very strong at home. Now, the Raiders, something's going to give in this game, fellas, because the Raiders were very good on the road. The Raiders were 6 wins and 2 losses on away games. So something's going to break right there, and I believe this is going to be a low-scoring game. You've got 2 teams that their offenses have been, very inconsistent. But I really like that the Raiders have some big playmakers. And Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree, these guys are big-time receivers. And if the Raiders can get some protection of the quarterback, that to me is going to be the key, because the defensive line for the Texans is very strong. And, fellas, I'll tell you this. This is one of those games where you look at the first time they played. Now, the first time they played, if you're a coach, you've got to go to the players and say, listen, what were you able to do in your individual matchups? And if I can tell the coach what I was able to do against the person I was going against, and I'm mostly talking about the interior 7 on both teams, because the defensive line, I believe, for the Texans was very strong. Big Wilfork, Bob, you know him. He's a big, strong man. He controlled the middle of the line. So what I'm looking for here is for what coaching staffs can go to the players, get some input about what they were successful on, and then it's going to come down to execution. So to me, I love it when a team's already played another team, especially when not in the same division. We know that if you're in the same division, you're playing a team twice a year. But these are non-division opponents that played each other. So I really look for the coaches to make some adjustments and the execution in the game. Bob, what do you think about those thoughts?
Well, I think there's absolutely has to be some adjustments need to be made in the running game, because we have to be able to run the football against Clowney, Vince Wilfork, Brian Cushing. Danny mentioned Whitney Merciless. So whatever we can do to run the football effectively with Jalen Richard, with Latavius Murray, with DeAndre Washington, we need to do that, because we need to be able to set up the play-action passes, because you're absolutely right. We have Cooper on the outside. We have Crabtree on the outside. And Connor Cook can make those throws. Connor Cook has a strong arm. That's one of the reasons we went and got him. We can throw the football down the field. That's one of the reasons I'm excited that he's going to be playing, is he can throw the football. When we played the Texans in Mexico City, we had 2 of our biggest pass plays of the year. We had a 75-yarder to Osweiler for a touchdown, and then Cooper had, I'm going to say, one in the 40 to 50-yard range, but another big play. So we made 2 big plays in the passing game. That's how we were able to defeat him. I think if we can establish the run, maybe we can make a couple big plays in the passing game. Maybe we can get a team on run defense. Reggie Nelson is a Pro Bowl safety. And we have, as Danny pointed out, we have Bruce Mack. We have Khalil Mack. We have Bruce Irvin. Khalil Mack hasn't really imposed his will on anybody this season in the last couple of games. So we need a big effort out of him. Bruce Irvin played his heart out last week. He was probably the only guy on the team that had put forth any effort. So I expect big things from Bruce Irvin. And Bruce Irvin's been there. Bruce Irvin's been to the Super Bowl. Bruce Irvin knows what it takes to prepare to get ready to win these kind of games. So that's kind of how I see it. I think adjustments need to be made. And I think Norton has to look at this. Norton has to really crank the pressure up on Osweiler, because he is not a quick decision maker. The shorter window that he has to make decisions, the worse decision he's going to make. So I think we really need to crank up the pressure on Osweiler.
Danny, give us your thoughts here, and then let's pick some winners for this game.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything Bob said. Houston has been a team I have been very unimpressed with throughout the year. While Oakland, I think they've lived a lot of games on the edge where you could argue they could have lost, but they have been road warriors, even going to the Eastern time zone, even though this one will be Central. I mean, they've proven they can win almost anywhere. And Derek Carr's injury is huge. And we talked about him. He was an MVP candidate. He's definitely the best player, at least the leader of the team. And, when you lose a guy like that, no matter what, it has a major impact. And it's taken them a couple games to try to get used to it. I think that if they can run an effective offense, whether that's through a lot of running the ball or a lot of high percentage throws, I think they can win this game. I think they could even kind of replicate what Kansas City does a lot, because I don't really trust Houston's offense that much. As long as you don't give Brock Osweiler easy opportunities to try to, make plays and not be a bust, I think Oakland can definitely win this game. And, they've shown how tough they are. Jack Del Rio has brought in this classic Maverick view of the Raiders, and I think that this is their chance to show that they don't care, even if they don't have their best player, that they can still win a playoff game.
So you picking the Raiders, Dan?
Yeah, I'm picking the Raiders. I have no faith in Houston. I think Connor Cook plays kind of like he did at Michigan State and puts together a pretty good game. I don't think they get much further past this first game, but I think they can win this game at Houston. And I think Bill O'Brien's a fine coach, but I don't think Houston is really that great.
Well, Danny, I'm going to take the Raiders for one reason. You guys might find this funny, but I'm going to tell you, the Raiders have played 6 really bad quarters. When Derek Carr got injured against the Colts there in the beginning of the second half, the Raiders have played 4 horrible quarters. And I've seen this pattern throughout the NFL all season long, where teams look so bad and you're like, wow, I'm really going to go for the other team because that team's looked horrible. And for whatever reason, pride, whatever, but the teams turn it around. And so I believe this game, the Raiders they're going to turn it around. I think the Raiders are going to go. They're going to win a close, low-scoring game against the Texans, and look for the Raiders to get into the second round. Bob, I know you're a Raider fan, so I'm going to ask you who's going to win, but I'm pretty much sure I know you're going to pick the Oakland Raiders.
Well, I would have just add this in Danny's comments about the Houston Texans, okay? The same thing that happened to the Raiders happened to the Tennessee Titans. They lost their quarterback in the second or third quarter of the game against Jacksonville. They ended up losing that game. If they win that game and then they ended up beating Houston the next week, we could be talking about the Tennessee Titans instead of the Texans. So that's how little of faith I have in the Texans. Yeah. So I would all certainly believe that the Raiders have the ability to win this game and go to the next round. I will close with those.
Well, the Texans opened up as a 1.5-point favorite. They're up to 3 points right now. We're all going to take the upset special there and go with the Oakland Raiders. The next game on Saturday night's an interesting game, if you ask me. It's a couple of teams that are not really playing that great of football right now going into the playoffs. The number 3 seeded Seattle Seahawks, they won the NFC Western Division, 10 wins, 5 losses, and 1 tie. It's the 4th time in the last 5 years that they've won the division. And they're going to host the number 6 seed Detroit Lions. Lions ended up losing the game Sunday night on the last day of the season here. And it was the 4th straight time that the winner of the North Division has won the championship on the last week of the season. So the Packers defeated Detroit. Detroit's going to go to Seattle. Detroit ended up the season, fellas, 9 wins and 7 losses, but they're limping into the playoffs. They had they're on a 3-game losing streak to end the season, and the quarterback Matthew Stafford broke his finger a while back, and he really hasn't been the same, fellas. And then you look at Seattle. They've kind of been mediocre the last part of the season here. They kind of, the last couple weeks ago, they lost their first home game to Arizona. And I don't know, guys. This game here is just, it's Seattle. They're very strong at home, 7 wins and 1 loss at home. I think basically that might be the advantage for Seattle. But I'm interested to get your guys' thought on this. Danny, why don't you start and tell us which team you'd like to talk about, or both of them. Who's the team that we should look at in this game, Dan?
No, I think Seattle will win this game pretty handily. I know Seattle doesn't always play that well during the regular season, but they're a team that you don't want to play in the playoffs, especially at home. And I think this is a terrible matchup for Detroit. And I've joked throughout the season, I'm a Bears fan, so I watch the NFC North a lot. That's really the division I'm from. And I had no faith that Detroit was going to win the division all year. And it just came to fruition that they choked it away to Green Bay. And you just feel like they've just lost it. I mean, the way that they lost that game at home, a chance to clinch their first division since the 90s, I mean, they're just falling apart right now. And I don't think they should fire Jim Caldwell or anything like that. I think they already said he's coming back next year. But I think that they're just mentally drained. And Seattle, they were my Super Bowl pick coming into the year, and they're still a team you don't want to play. I think this could be maybe tight early on, but I think Seattle will win this game pretty handily. I have no faith in Detroit at all, and I think Seattle is still that dark horse. I wouldn't even say a dark horse. It's a legit contender to win the NFC, even if they have to go to Dallas.
It's Danny, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with my premise of, remember, when these NFL teams get in these funks, for some reason, pride, whatever, they turn it around. So I'm not going to be surprised if Detroit goes there and gives them a heck of a game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, that's for sure. And the loss of the safety Earl Thomas for Seattle's really hurt their defense. Bob, what's your opinion on this game?
I would kind of echo what Danny said. First of all, the Lions, they won some close games early. Stafford played well, but they have zero running game. They rely 100% on their passing game to create any kind of, the short passing game and the long passing game, to create any kind of offense for them. You pointed out Stafford's got a broken index finger on his right hand. They've lost 3 straight. And echoing Danny's comments, Seattle in the playoffs at home, I think it's pretty much, as they say in Latin, a fait accompli. I don't see the Lions being able to compete. I just think that the Seahawks, I'm not going to say they're going to roll them, but I just don't see how the Seahawks are going to lose to that Detroit Lions team at home in the playoffs.
Well, the point spread right now, fellas, it opened up at 7.5. It's up to 8 points right now. So, Danny, you and Bob are laying the 8 points. I'm going to go with Detroit and take the 8 points. I think they're going to keep it close and competitive, but Seattle may win the game. I mentioned that early, but I think it's going to be a close game. So I'm going to go ahead and take Detroit plus the 8 points. You guys going to lay the points, right? That's what I'm hearing from you.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Seahawks to win this game handily.
Okay, so
I agree.
We all like Seattle to win the game, but the point spread is going to come into play there. So, all right, well, listen, fellas, Sunday morning, we've got the AFC second-round game here, the second playoff game between the Pittsburgh Steelers, the number 3 seed, winners of the AFC Northern Division, 11 wins and 5 losses. They're going to host number 6 Miami Dolphins, 10 wins and 6 losses. They ended up second place in the AFC East division there behind the New England Patriots, the number 1 seed. And again, fellas, this is another one of those games where these teams played each other earlier in the season. And interestingly enough, Miami defeated Pittsburgh early in the season, October 16th, week 6. They defeated them 30-15. Now, since then, quarterback Ryan Tannehill, he got injured. He's been out. Backup quarterback Matt Moore's come in. He's done a pretty good job. I did see that Tannehill was practicing with the team, and he could be a last-second starter, but he's definitely going to be activated. Again, I like to look at some of the small little things. Miami started off the season, fellas. They were 1 win and 4 losses. A really poor start, but then they turned it around. They won 6 consecutive games, and they finished the season winning 9 of their last 11. So they're playing very good ball. Conversely, you got the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are the hottest team in the AFC, going into the playoffs with 7 straight victories. They started the season kind of exactly opposite of the Dolphins. They began the season 4-1. They lost 4 consecutive games right in the middle, right after Ben Roethlisberger had gotten injured, and he had gotten injured in that loss to Miami, injured his knee. He was out for the next few games, and the teams that defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers in those games were all very good teams. The Patriots, Ravens, and Cowboys are very good teams, so those losses by Pittsburgh were to very good teams. But this is a couple of teams, fellas, that are peaking at the right time. Bob, who do you like in this game? And tell me why.
Oh, I think it comes down. I think it's Pittsburgh all the way, bro. You're talking about Big Ben in big games. You're talking about Antonio Brown, probably the most dynamic receiver in the league. Le'Veon Bell is playing lights out right now. Then you go to the other side of the football. You have the old veteran James Harrison, Ryan Shazier. They have a very experienced secondary. And then you look to the sidelines. Tomlin's a veteran coach who's been in a lot of those big games, and so. And then you look at the other side. I mean, Gase is a good young offensive mind. Who knows what's going to happen with Tannehill? If it was me, I wouldn't put Tannehill in there because Pittsburgh's going to be getting after whoever's in there. Okay, whoever's in there, Pittsburgh's going to be getting after him. Although they may be able to offset that with Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi is a great runner. I think he's had over 3 games of 200 yards this year. You throw in Jarvis Landry, who's a Pro Bowl receiver. So Miami has some weapons. They got Sue on defense. They got Cameron Wake on defense. They got a decent secondary. But I just think in a big game like this, I'm putting my money on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, Bob, one of the games that Jay Ajayi ran over 200 yards was against the Steelers in that game where Miami defeated Pittsburgh. So the question mark is Pittsburgh's defense, which has improved steadily, can they stop the run? Because Miami is going to try to load up on the run. And Jay Ajayi is a very good running back. He ended up number 4 in the NFL. But, Danny, what's your perspective on this game?
Yeah, I'm with Bob. I mean, Pittsburgh, I know that they had their losing streak, but that's a team I was never worried about. I kept saying that they were going to get it together. I still think they're the biggest threat to the Patriots in the AFC. They were Seattle, and they were my Super Bowl picks coming into the year. I still think Pittsburgh is that good. I mean, you got to remember, they were a late fumble away from knocking off Denver in Denver last year. We could have had a completely different Super Bowl champion. I know it's 2 different years, but they're always a tough team. They're hot at the right time. I trust Big Ben. I trust Antonio Brown. I trust Le'Veon Bell. I think their defense has figured it out. And as impressed as I am by what Adam Gase has done with Miami, and I think the way he changed their offense has been impressive. Here are their wins this year. They beat Pittsburgh, which is a good win. They have wins over Cleveland, 2 against the Bills, 2 against the Jets, the Chargers, the Rams, the Niners, and the Cardinals. So when you look at the teams they've beaten, they really beaten up on weak teams. And while it's still impressive to beat those teams, a win is a win in the NFL, it's a team that I wouldn't have that much faith in coming into this game.
Now, Danny, that's good homework, okay? I'm impressed with that, all right? I thought I had some stats here, and you did me up one there, Danny. Very good. I also think this, Dan. Miami hasn't been very strong. Miami hasn't been very strong on the road, fellas. 4 wins and 4 losses. The point spread started out at 7.5. Pittsburgh favored. It's up to 10 right now. So I think the public and a lot of the betting people and guys, you know what? As much as we gotta take a look at the betting line because these guys know what they're doing. And if the betting line's gone up to 10. That tells me that people are feeling pretty much like you and Bob, Dan. Bob, do you have any closing comments, or are we all 3 liking the Pittsburgh Steelers in this game? And I don't know about laying 10 points, fellas, but that's a lot of points. But we all like Pittsburgh in this pretty easily. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. And the other thing that I would add is that it's at Pittsburgh. When they played Miami, when Miami beat them, they beat them in Miami. And the conditions in Pittsburgh in January are much different than the conditions in Miami in October.
Very good, Bob. That's a great point.
I'll close with those comments.
Yeah, very good. All right, fellas. Well, then that leaves the last game of the weekend on Sunday afternoon at 1:40. The Green Bay Packers are going to host the New York Giants. And I think this is going to be a heck of a game, guys. These are 2 really fine teams right now that are playing really well. Green Bay ended up defeating on Sunday night. They defeated Detroit to win the NFC North. And Green Bay goes into the playoffs, fellas. They are red hot right now. Them and the Pittsburgh Steelers are the 2 hottest teams with consecutive win streaks to close out the season. And Aaron Rodgers is just playing fabulous football right now. I mean, guys, 15 touchdowns, no interceptions in his last 6 games. All the games have been victories. But again, the New York Giants, you look at the Giants. They are a very good team. Their defense, 3rd rated in the NFL. They come in 11 wins, 5 losses. They were 2nd in the NFC East behind the Dallas Cowboys, the number 1 seeded team in the NFC. The defense for the Giants, they went out. They spent a lot of money to enforce their defense. It's paid off. They're giving up just 17 points per game. That's second lowest in the NFL. You've got Eli Manning coming into the playoffs. He has not been playing very well. He has been really mediocre, especially the last 4 games. But, he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. So we know this is a quarterback-driven league. Bob, you always like to bring that up, and I concur with you all the time. You've got to have a good quarterback, and we've got 2 really good quarterbacks squaring off in this game. Now, a couple of things I'm going to throw out here before I get your guys' opinion. The New York Giants, they were only 4 wins and 4 losses on the road. This game is in Green Bay, the old frigid tundra. And at home, Green Bay is very strong. They have one of the best winning records at home, only behind the New England Patriots. So this is a tough game for New York to go there and win. But I'd like to see what you guys think about this game, because I'm going to leave you with one other thought, fellas. Over the last several years in the wild card weekend, the visiting teams have won 50% of the games. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'm going to get your thoughts. And so far, we've picked one upset out of the 2, and two teams that we thought that were favorites to win. So here's game 4. Bob, who wants to start? You or Danny?
I'll start, I guess. I mean, what can you say about Aaron Rodgers? You already pretty much laid out his stats. He guaranteed his team wouldn't lose another game about 6 weeks ago. They haven't lost another game since. Mike McCarthy is a great coach. He'll have his team ready because he's got a great offensive mind. The combination of him, Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, and Devontae Adams, they should be able to generate some points against that Giant defense. Although Spagnuolo's a veteran guy, he's been around. They're the only team that beat the Cowboys this year. They beat them twice. So Spagnuolo's got some tricks up his sleeve. I actually, quite frankly, I've been amazed at the job that Ben McAdoo has done coming in there and taking the Giants to the playoffs in his first year as their coach. I typically don't have a lot of faith in Eli. I think he's. You used the term mediocre. I think that probably best explains his season this year. So. The Giants are a very good team, but I'm not going to bet against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers at Lambeau Field in the playoffs. I'm taking the Packers.
Bob, 5 consecutive games that the offense for the New York Giants have not scored 20 points. That kind of goes along with the mediocrity of their quarterback, Eli Manning. So he's not lighting it up. Danny, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, it's interesting. These are 2 teams that a lot of people think can get hot at the right time and win it all. They both have done it from the wild card spot before with these quarterbacks. And, we talk about how good the Packers have played, and they really have. And that was a team that I kept thinking would still find a way to win the division. They took care of business. Aaron Rodgers is clutch. And Bob made a point. I do think Eli Manning is mediocre. If you compare him to Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers, the other guys in his class, I actually think he's the weakest of the 3. But he's mediocre in the regular season. For some reason, when he gets in the playoffs, he turns it on. And it's one of those things with the Giants for me is I don't want to bet against them. I've been unimpressed with them throughout the regular season. While I do think their defense is pretty good and they can get after people, I think their offense can be suspect. I think they took advantage of some easy games. And Odell Beckham, I think, can be a distraction. Eli still throws terrible interceptions. But I can't bet against them in the playoffs. I at least see them getting through this game. I'm not saying that I think that they're a great team or anything like that, but both times they've won the Super Bowl with Eli, I have not been impressed with them during the regular season. But they get in there and something changes. And that's what I think is going to happen. Eli Manning is 2-0 in Lambeau Field in the playoffs, including a win against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers the last time the Giants won the Super Bowl. So I'm going to give them a slight edge just because it's the Giants, and they haven't impressed me, which means they're going to do well.
Danny, I love it when you bring those perspectives in, Danny. That's very good. A couple of last things here that I want to bring up because I got a little soundbite here from you fellas. The New York Giants, after their big victory on Sunday, a couple of the boys had decided they'd go to Miami for a little party, and we got a little soundbite from quarterback Eli Manning. But before we go there, the last the last 4 games of the season here, the offense for the Green Bay Packers has been red hot. They're averaging 34 points a game. But on that same note, their defense is giving up 25 points a game. So, maybe this is just the medicine that the New York Giants need, is to go to Green Bay. Their defense is not, I don't think it's one of the top defenses. I think that's actually their Achilles heel. Their defense is not that good, and maybe, Dan, I can see the point that you're building here, that the New York Giants could be a team. But I want to throw a little soundbite here. As I mentioned to you, the boys, Beckham Jr., the receiver, and a couple of the other fellas went to Miami and hung out with old Justin Bieber. And we got a little soundbite here from Eli Manning talking about it.
I think as a team, we kind of always pride ourselves on being well prepared. So when I saw some of the pictures, I was a little disappointed just because obviously they didn't pack accordingly. They didn't have any shirts.
Eli's talking about the picture that they showed here on the Facebook page. The boys were sitting there with thongs on and no shirts. But Danny, is this a problem, or what do you think about the boys taking off on their day off and going to to Miami on their day off, the week of the playoff game?
It's definitely a bad situation to put yourself in if you get a negative outcome. I don't mind overall them trying to relax. I think there's nothing wrong with taking advantage of your day off. But when you're a team that's a wild card team, I think especially Odell Beckham, with how emotional he can be, if they lose to Green Bay, you've just set yourself up for an immediate excuse and a reason for people to criticize you. I'm not saying that I have a problem with it, but let's look back at how many times Tony Romo got criticized when in his first, I think it was his second playoff appearance, technically, when they were 1 seed, they had a bye week. He and Jessica Simpson went somewhere, some tropical area, as did Jason Witten and his girlfriend or wife, but of course everyone kind of forgets that part. But everyone blamed Romo because he had a bad game and they lost, and everyone said, well, what were you doing there, even though Wade Phillips, their coach, had wanted them all to just take the week off and relax. With this, you're doing it the week of at a wild card game. I think it's something that's going to be an issue if you don't win, and you have to be ready to accept that. It's not something I would have been bragging about doing necessarily, but, you do what you want on your day off, but just be prepared. It's something that people can throw in your face.
Bob, do you concur with Danny, or you got another thought?
Well, no, I would say the same thing, and then also with social media being what it is, you post it on Facebook. All you do is set yourself up for criticism, and I would only add this in talking about what Danny talked about. If they had a week off and they weren't playing next week, not a big deal. But they have a game. They have a game this week. Okay, if they didn't have a game this week, if they were the team that was sitting home like Dallas or Atlanta and had a week off, go to Miami for a couple days. But I think, once again, echoing Danny's points, it puts a different light onto the situation if you get a negative. If you, in fact, you lose the game, all of a sudden people got stuff to talk about. And I'm like you. I don't have any problem with anybody enjoying their day off. I just wouldn't be posting it on social media, and I might think about the consequences of what happens if we don't have a successful week. So I'll end with those comments.
Yeah, we'll probably bring some nice shirts, okay? Like Eli said, they didn't bring good. We're going to pack some better clothes than the boys did. Hey, fellas, here's the spread, okay? It started out, Green Bay was a 7.5.
Maybe they thought they were traveling with J.R. Smith from Cleveland.
Yeah, very good, Bob. Hey,
yeah, they should have brought J.R. Smith there. He would have fit right in.
That's what I'm talking about, fellas. Hey, Green Bay opened up, guys, 7.5-point favorite, but it's down to 4 right now. So a lot of people aren't too disturbed about the boys going to Miami and partying it up there, and a lot of people are believing in the New York Giants. And I really believe, fellas, that this is going to be the highest scoring game of the 4, and I think it's going to be the best matchup. I think the Raiders and Houston are going to have a very competitive, low-scoring game. I think we all three agree that Pittsburgh's going to probably run it up on Miami there. And, this in Detroit and Seattle, that game I think is a real big question mark for me. You guys both think Seattle could steamroll Detroit. I think they're going to keep it a little competitive. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is competitive because, again, this stupid pattern that you think about, you say, really, Nick, you're basing it on that they've played a couple of bad games in a row. But we've seen this happen in the NFL. I don't know what it is, but for some reason they'll turn it around and they'll play a good game this week. So I think we got 4 pretty good matchups, fellas. I like Green Bay to edge New York. I think it's going to be a great game. But again, the odds say that there's going to be 2 visiting teams that are going to knock off these home teams in this wild card weekend. It happens every single season. As we get deeper in the playoffs, the home field advantage seems to be a greater advantage, especially because the number 1 and 2 seeds are sitting at home and they get games at their park. So going to their parks and upsetting those teams, fellas, when they've had a week off and they're the higher seeds, it's not as often. So anyway, fellas, listen, thanks a lot for joining me today. I'm excited about these playoff games. Can't wait to get back here next week and preview the championship games the following weekend. And the 10th inning will return next week. I want to thank Danny Reiter, and you can follow Danny on Twitter at SportsReiter number 12. SportsReiter and the number 12. And you can follow Bob and I on Overtime with Nick and Bob. That's our Facebook page. Thank you very much for joining us here on the 10th inning. We'll be back next week.